I'm finally making a video of what's in my camera bag. This is my camera bag. It's the Peter McKinnon signature bag by Nomadic. It took me a while to make this video because I didn't have a bag before and I didn't have enough gear to even talk about in a what's in my camera bag video anyway. So now that I have the things I need to do the job, I can actually talk about it. And I have a very minimalist setup that I think that you'll be interested in because I can pretty much do every freelance gig that I take on with this pretty minimal and pretty affordable, relatively speaking, setup. So let's get into it. First off, let's talk quickly about the Peter McKinnon bag. I wanted this for a while and I couldn't justify it at first because it's like over $400, but I really wanted it and I finally just said, screw it, I'm gonna treat myself, and I got it and I do not regret it at all. It's an amazing bag. It's the best bag I've ever had. It fits so much stuff in it, and even when there's really heavy stuff in it, it still like carries it really well. It's really like kind of firm and rigid and set up for carrying, you know, a lot of gear. And depending on what shoots I'm going to, sometimes I need a little bit of everything. So I like how comfortable this bag is, and it does what it needs to. There's definitely other bags out there that are cheaper. I just find this bag really sexy and I kind of had to splurge on it. First off, let's talk about cameras. This camera right here is the first camera that I ever owned that I shot video on. It's not the first camera I've ever owned. I've been shooting photos since I was like 16. But this is the original Sony A7S, the OG one. You don't hear about this one too much anymore because the A7S III is absolutely amazing and way better than this. But this is still a very capable camera, full frame, amazing in low light. I still use it. I actually mainly these days use this camera for photos. So I'll have this set up to take photos while I'm shooting videos on my main camera, and I'll be able to easily swap between photos and videos. Or if I'm shooting a video and I'm trying to talk about my other camera, I use this. It only shoots HD. You can shoot 4K or record it externally to like something like an Atomos Ninja, but internally it only records HD. But honestly, the majority of the time I don't necessarily need 4K. Though I do love using it, and I use it all the time on my other camera. Every once in a while I have to jump back to HD if I'm using this. Also got the small rig camera cage on here. I have a small rig for both my cameras. This is great. It has a bunch of different mounting options if I want to mount my mic here, or a monitor here. It's super durable. It literally makes your camera feel like a tank. And I like that about it. It makes it feel just like if I'm gonna drop it, it's not a problem. I don't have to worry about it as much. It does make it quite a bit heavier and bigger in general. So if you're trying to be super compact, especially this one on the A7S, the one on my other camera is pretty sleek and a lot smaller. The added weight actually for shooting video is nice, and it makes it easier to get steadier shots. The lens I have on here that I generally use on this camera a lot is the Sony Zeiss 16-35 f4. I really wish I would have got the f2.8, but it was like an extra $1,000, which is just insane to me. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so I opted for the f4, and I've been regretting it ever since. I just wish that all my lenses were at least 2.8. I find myself in low light situations quite often. Fortunately, this camera, if I'm using it on this, it's not really a problem because I can bump that ISO and it still looks amazing. But I also love to blur out the background too, and I just really like playing around with Aputure. F4 doesn't really do it for me, but this is a great workhorse lens. I used to use this predominantly for real estate shoots because that 16 super wide angle looks great for, you know, showing the whole space, and 35mm go right into some more nice close-up shots. So it's a good range. I kind of wish it was a little bit bigger, like a 16-50 or something. 2.8, that would be great. But this is by far one of my sharpest lenses I have. It looks super nice. The glass is really nice. The Zeiss, nice, rhyming here. It's an amazing lens. It's the nicest lens I think I own. Always make sure you have an ND filter too. If you don't know why, just look it up. You're gonna need ND filters. While we're talking about lenses, full frame lenses that is, I have a cheapo Sony 50mm f1.8. I bought this for like 250 bucks. So if you can't afford a good lens, it's fine. You can get a cheap lens, and this lens is great. It's got 1.8 aperture. What more can you ask for? You can totally blur out that background. The bokeh looks amazing, and it was super cheap and super lightweight. If you're trying to just have a really low profile setup, this lens is great. I will say the autofocus on this is kind of weird. You have to get a little used to it. It's nowhere near as good as the autofocus on my other lenses. My other lens, which I've talked about in other videos, is a vintage lens. It's a a Canon 50mm FD 1.4. And this is by far my favorite lens, though I don't use it that much anymore. It's not necessarily the most practical lens, as it's a manual focus only lens, but if I have the time and I'm wanting to make a more creative shoot, the look of this lens is amazing. If you want to see some comparisons, I have an old video that's specifically comparing this lens to all my other lenses, and you can kind of see the character of this lens if you go check out that video. By the way, this lens I got for 100 bucks. Used, so super cheap too. Oh, and also another nice thing about this cage is you can attach this handle to it, and look at that. This makes it, I tried out a cinema camera one time. My first time ever trying it out, it was a Sony FX5, and I was amazed by how comfortable it felt carrying that camera, and that hand grip that just like your hand fits right on so well. So I got this cage mainly originally to get this hand grip, and oh does it feel so good. Like when you're shooting with this hand grip, man, you just feel like you're like a part of the camera. Highly recommend trying out a handle. I also have a top handle, which I'll show you in a second. Top handles are super important to have when shooting video. Really helpful to get steady shots because the camera's kind of holding down. The weight of the camera is pulling down and keeping it steady. So top handles are really useful. And now switch on this camera here so I can show you my other camera. It is a Sony A6600. So it's a micro 3/3, whatever you call it. It's a crop sensor camera, APS-C. There's like 3 names for those types of cameras. Anyway, this camera is a very small camera that I originally bought to make these YouTube videos, and then I found myself using it more than anything. So it's a great camera. It's, you know, relatively cheap. It's like 1,600 bucks or something. I love how small and compact it is, and it really packs a punch. So up there on the top, let's get this in focus again. Oh yeah, and the autofocus on this camera compared to this camera is so much better. It's like night and day. This camera, the original A7S, the autofocus was kind of really bad. It's amazing on this other camera. So up top there, I got a Feelworld. Come on, get in focus there. There you go, buddy. Feelworld LUT 6, I believe. And it's a cheap, affordable monitor. You can see how much easier it is to film yourself when you have a monitor. It is also much more enjoyable and easier to pull focus if you're shooting with a manual lens. It's just more fun all around to shoot with because you can see actually what you're doing. You can put LUTs in there, so if you're shooting an S-Log, you can put a conversion LUT on there and you can see exactly what it's gonna look like afterwards, thus not having to worry about screwing up your exposure. And another thing we got here, sorry the audio is not going to be as good for a second because I stepped away, but I will show you this Rode mic. Videomic Pro Plus is what I use a lot for especially these videos. I have it on a mic stand that is hooked up with this long cable, extension cable, and then into my camera. So I can get this mic, you know, really close to my face. So look at it's actually right here, just out of frame. Like I'm touching it right now, like just a millimeter out of frame. I always look at this is the only problem with the monitor is sometimes you look at the monitor instead of the lens, which I haven't quite got used to. But yeah, the mic's right here and it sounds better than any other mic I have if it's really close to me. So you gotta make sure with these mics that they're always as close as possible and they'll sound amazing. So with that A6600, I bought it in a kit with the 18 to 135 f3.5 to 5.6, depending on how much you're zoomed in. I thought this was gonna be an amazing lens that I would use all the time, but again, like I said before with that Zeiss lens, I made a mistake. I need lower aperture. I need a faster lens. This doesn't work for me in the environments that I shoot in. It's awesome for photos. I use it a lot for taking photos, even for portraits, like zooming into that 135. I love that focal length. Anywhere 100 and above really compresses the background. Makes for beautiful bokeh. For shooting video, I don't use this lens that much, but I have it. And I just used it in a wedding I just shot recently. It was super helpful to get that extra reach. Here's that top handle I was talking about. It's a small rig, super nice looking, like the wood addition to there. It's put onto a, what do you call this? It like tightens down. I'm totally spacing out on what this is called, but you have to put a little receiver on the top of your cage. So this clamps right on, makes it easy to take on and off. You can turn this here, loosen this, and you can move the handle which way you want it. So that's super nice. One of these Casey Neistat classic Gorilla Pods for vlogging, or just bringing, always have it in your camera bag. So if you want to set up your camera somewhere, or you want to do a time lapse, whatever. I got the smaller version. I didn't get the big 5-inch, or no, it's not called a 5-inch, but anyway, I got the smaller version because I have the smaller camera, but once I have a cage on it and a monitor and a microphone, this ball just starts kind of like, wow. So I wish I would have got the bigger one. This is a speed flash, and I only really use this for doing real estate shoots. If you don't use a speed flash when you're doing real estate shoots, you should definitely try, because it makes a world of difference. It makes your life way easier. You don't have to do HDR shots. You can just snap one shot with this, bouncing it off the ceiling, and it kind of just lights up the whole room and you can nail it in one shot. This is a Godox TT685S. It was kind of pricey, and I really wish I would have just gotten a cheaper one that was a lot more simple. There's too many buttons on there. There's too many options. The trigger I have that's supposed to match it doesn't work sometimes. Drones. I love drones. You always gotta have a drone in your kit. I've been flying drones for I don't know how many years, but I started with the Phantom 4, big old thing. I've traveled around the world with it, and it's huge case it came with. This thing is way smaller. This is the Air 2, not the Air 2S. I wish it was the Air 2S. I got this before the Air 2S came out, and I think I need to get the Air 2S. That 1-inch sensor on there, better low light, better just quality image anyway. But this is a great drone, I don't really have a whole lot of issues with it. You do have to really pay attention to the kind of lighting you're shooting in, but you should be paying attention to that anyway when you're shooting anything. So shoot in good light and you get amazing images with this drone, and it packs up super small, and it's by far the most stable running drone I've ever owned. If you've had drones in the past, you would go to turn it on, set it up, and half the time it wouldn't work and you couldn't fly and you couldn't do the job. This thing has worked every single time for me. I've never had a problem with this thing not just turning on and working. So that is super important to me. This little guy, this was honestly my first professional light that I ever had. I mean, I don't know if it's considered a professional light, but it's an Aputure Amaran Mini, I think is what it's called. This has the diffuser on it. Take that off. It's a super fun little light. It has little magnets on the back too. You can just stick it onto things. You can turn it to any color that you want, and you can change the intensity and whatever you want. So it's a super fun light to start out with. If you don't have any lights, it's cheap. It's like $100. I mean, it seems like a lot for a small little light, but it's super color accurate. Aputure is the best lights for video especially, and they have their Sidus Link app where you can link all of your lights. If you buy just Aputure lights, you can control them all from an app, which for setting up a studio or just setting up a shoot in general, being able to just on your phone, on the fly, turn off lights, try different lighting setups, change the intensity, everything from your phone. So that alone makes Aputure a really good way to go. That's better. Some little knickknacks that I find are really important are this little guy right here, and that is to clean my lens off and to clean a sensor out. You don't want to be using a lens cloth on your sensor, so if you got a little dust in there, I'm changing lenses a lot outdoors, and I'm always worried about dust getting on my sensor, so every once in a while I give my camera and lenses a little clean. Or the lens cloth I'll use, super good to just carry around. I carry it in my pocket a lot of times at shoots and just check it every once in a while. I've had shoots ruined because I had a dirty lens or sensor. It was most likely the sensor. I also shoot a lot with a gimbal, and I honestly don't think you need to worry about too much what gimbal you have, because if it's a gimbal that does what it needs to do, which is stabilize your camera, then it's a gimbal that you can use. This is the Zhiyun Crane 2. I bought this used for like 250 bucks. I have no complaints about this gimbal. It works great. Oh no, I do have one complaint, is the battery. Look at that, I got to undo this. It makes this terrible sound when you do it. And the batteries are just regular, or they're not regular, they're their own specific rechargeable batteries. But you have to do that every time you charge it, and then you have to put it back, and there's more threads than it seems like there needs to be, so it takes a while. Anyway, why can't you just plug it in and charge it? I don't know. You don't need a gimbal to start freelancing. I didn't have one for a while. I had a glide cam for a while, which these days you can buy one of these for about the same price anyway. Maybe you can find a glide cam for 100 bucks used, and they work great too. So it doesn't have to be a motorized gimbal. It can totally be a normal glide cam or steady cam, and that works great as well. And I want to show you guys this too. This is pretty funny. I was in San Jose doing a shoot. You guys might have saw a video I made about it. I passed by a gun shop, and I had this idea to buy some pepper spray, and I haven't done this yet. Maybe I'll do this at some point soon, but I wanted to have some sort of mount where it mounts on my camera on the cage like this, and that way if I'm out shooting like at night on my own, or I'm in kind of a sketchy area, which I end up a lot when I'm traveling, if somebody asks me to give me my camera rather, I can be like, oh yeah, you want my camera? Here you go. Spray them right in the face, and I'm out. So I have other things on my shelf back here. I'll show you some other stuff when I actually have my studio fully built out. Still have a long way to go with that, but that is pretty much what I use on a regular basis. So it's not really too many things. Most of it, or all of it, can fit in my camera bag when I'm going to a shoot. I don't bring every piece of gear with me to every shoot, so I pack the bag differently for what I need it for. Just get out there, start shooting. You'll figure out along the way what you need and what you don't need, and just add one thing at a time, and make sure the things that you add are things that when you use it are things that are gonna make your production better and are gonna be actually like fun and usable to shoot with. Don't just go out and get things because you see somebody using it and you think you need it. Just get the things that are gonna actually help you with your business or your creative videos. One last thing, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It's finally starting to grow. I'm finally starting to see some progress with it. Thank you guys so much for your support. Please, if you haven't yet, like and subscribe, and I would really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next video.